This is going to be the most difficult comparison of all time because NoPain and I completely disagree in this test of these two motorcycles. Stay tuned. Yeah, hello and a warm welcome to 1000 PS TV. Greetings from windy but beautifully sunny Gran Canaria. I'm Nils and NoPain is here with me. We picked up both motorcycles at the beginning of the week in Las Palmas at Canary Ride, the Africa Twin Adventure Sports with the 19-inch front wheel and the BMW R 1300 GS, also of course with the 19-inch front wheel. And NoPain, we already disagree on the most important point of the test because you have a favorite and I don't. I think that has basically been the problem over the last 2 days. Is it still like that? Do you still have a favorite? Don't reveal it yet.
I do have a favorite for myself, a clear one. And apart from that, I would have a recommendation depending on how the motorcycle is going to be used. I would have a very clear recommendation there.
I don't have a favorite. It's really difficult, but let's try to work our way toward it. There are two main topics here. NoPain, it was your first time riding a DCT gearbox, which has been around for 10 years now. And you also tried BMW's adaptive ride height control on the BMW R 1300 GS for the first time. Maybe we start like this. You are an ambitious, passionate motorcyclist. You get on the Honda with the DCT gearbox. How was it for you? Does it castrate your motorcycling? Or did it give you a nice, enriching experience?
So I have had my license for 35 years. And like you said, I actually managed until today to never ride an Africa Twin and never try the DCT gearbox. And even though I'm very interested in technology and very open to innovations, I always thought with DCT, that's where the fun kind of ends. Like a quick shifter, absolutely, but without a clutch lever and without a shift lever, that would have been a bit too much for me or too little of the good stuff. And now the opportunity came up. We spontaneously swapped bikes in a parking lot. Then I got a short introduction, 30 seconds, what to do, what not to do. That was important because otherwise I probably would have messed it up right away before even setting off by twisting the throttle. Yeah, exactly. And then we took off. And it was really like this. After about 20 minutes of riding, I didn't look for the clutch lever a single time or the shift pedal. It's completely intuitive. And after the longer winter break, I wasn't that dialed in yet. And the roads here are also demanding, sometimes very tight. After riding the BMW with the manual gearbox before that, it was honestly a real relief. And I was a bit annoyed at myself because I thought, I'm actually such an idiot. Why didn't I try this much earlier?
And for you personally now, would you say if you owned a motorcycle and rode it privately, would that be a fully fledged motorcycle for you? Is it a motorcycle that is more than a normal motorcycle or less than a normal motorcycle? Does it take something away from motorcycling? How do you see DCT now?
If I had the choice whether to ride or buy an Africa Twin with or without DCT, then after these 3 days, I would very clearly say the Africa Twin, I'm going to claim, if you're not riding off-road, I don't know, but if you mainly ride on the road and maybe occasionally a gravel road, I would absolutely take DCT. I cannot even think of a reason why someone would want to skip DCT unless they are some kind of weight fetishist or it really comes down to the few extra euros in price, which is of course an argument. But if money doesn't matter, I would definitely take the Honda Africa Twin with DCT.
So a highly recommended thing. I feel the same. You already know that for years I've been a big fan of DCT. For me, it's always an enrichment because I have 5% more of my senses available for the things that really matter, the corners. And folks, in some scenes you might think, oh my God, that overtake was dangerous, or oh my God, how can they ride side by side? You have to keep in mind, when we produce 1000 PS videos, we are always connected via a communication system. And that means for the video shots, we can actually orchestrate the group. So we would never overtake blindly somewhere. But if someone deliberately rides ahead to check the line and the lane, you can basically direct the rider behind so they are in the right position for the shots. In normal riding with normal group members, without a video production, it also has a safety aspect. The first rider, who is possibly the most experienced, can pass valuable information to the group. Watch out, this corner tightens, or careful, a tour bus is coming toward us. We have noticed that the people who are very skeptical at first often become the biggest chatterboxes by the end of the day, which can be a bit annoying. You then have to discipline them a bit. But if you keep it under control, so it remains a safety feature and not a coffee gossip feature, then it is excellent for everyone in the group. But sometimes some people like to chat too much and some like to chat a bit less. That's not the system's fault, that's the people's personalities. And you just have to trim that a bit during the breaks.
For Gran Canaria, I consciously chose leather. The asphalt here is extremely rough, and as we all know, the devil never sleeps. Sure, there was a bit of risk because in winter it can definitely rain on the Canaries and leather simply isn't waterproof, but I got lucky in unlucky circumstances. It could have been much worse. After 3 pretty mixed days, the sun finally came out and then my gear could really show what it can do in temperatures between 5 and 25 degrees. I was riding with the Vanucci VSJ-5 leather jacket in size 52 and the Vanucci VST-2 leather pants in size 50. Both are connected with a zipper and that makes the whole setup feel like one piece. In terms of safety, I was also well equipped. In addition to the stock shoulder, elbow, hip and knee protectors, I also inserted the Vanucci Super Shield HTP back protector into the designated pocket. And under the leather, I wore the VXU6 seamless functional underwear. Especially the first days were really nasty. Rain again and again and temperatures down to 5 degrees. That made the underwear surprise me in a very positive way. It fits comfortably, insulates very well and dries extremely fast. The jacket and pants also impressed me, lots of freedom of movement and still a sporty cut with pre-shaped sleeves. That created an ideal compromise between safety and comfort. The thick cowhide keeps out wind and cold, and thanks to perforations and ventilation openings with mesh material, moisture management also works well. All in all, my Vanucci selection absolutely proved itself on Gran Canaria and gave me the confidence I needed in every kind of weather.
Another thing I'd like to mention at this point is our camera gear. It's incredible how Insta360 has caught up even with classic action cams, and what a great product they've got here. At 1000 PS, we publish videos daily in multiple languages. A company with 30 employees depends on the success of our videos, and that means we can't take any risks with video equipment. That's why we use the Ace Pro 2 across all our productions. For us, it has a few advantages that matter in professional use. First, it has a flip screen, which makes checking framing unbelievably easy. Second, it has this port on the side where you can use standard jack plug microphones. Just plug in a wired mic, no Bluetooth, no constant charging, and perfect audio. Super simple, the app works great, the software is mature, no bugs, no corrupted files. The only point of criticism we've mentioned multiple times is the record button, which is a bit hard to operate with motorcycle gloves. But like I said, quality-wise and feature-wise, leading across the board, this action cam is our first choice for our content productions. We didn't know the adaptive ride height control was included, but the rental company Canary Ride is a smart guy and he packed it in. And you were confused because you privately rode a 1250 rally and you wondered, hey, why am I coming down so nicely here? How can that be? Until the moment of enlightenment came. That changes everything for you with the GS. Right?
Yes, I owned an R 1200 GS myself for 2 years, and of course I also rode the 1250 in various tests. And even with the low seat position, I always struggled a bit to get down securely with both feet. And on the low seat position, the seat angle was already a bit too sporty for me. And on the high seat position, what I always missed my entire GS life was that when stopping or on gravel, I always had to paddle a bit if I stepped into a hole with my foot. That's why the GS eventually dropped out for me. There would have been an option to lower it, but then you would have had to buy it lowered. And I didn't really like that either because the suspension travel exists for a reason. Giving that up and paying extra for it, I didn't want that either. And now, when I sat on this bike, I thought this can't be real. Which seat setting is this? Because on one hand, I was sitting very comfortably in terms of knee angle and hip angle, and on the other hand, I could reach the ground like on a small bike. I honestly didn't understand it. Then we looked at the seat adjustment and there was nothing to adjust, neither higher nor lower. That was really strange until we checked the spec sheet and realized that this feature was included. And it works so subtly that we didn't notice it. We didn't notice it, and even if you concentrate on it, you just don't feel it. Only when you look at the display and watch when it switches, then I imagine I can feel that I'm sitting higher or have more suspension travel. But that's probably just imagination because the logo is there. So you ride off with a good footing. You ride like always. And as soon as you stop, you have a good footing. It doesn't get much better than that.
Okay, so 2 features that enrich life and broaden the target group. People for whom it used to be too tall can now try it. And for those who want a completely new perspective on motorcycling, the Africa Twin with the DCT gearbox is still the clear number 1. Even though there are GS motorcycles with an automated manual transmission, that is not a dual clutch transmission. On the Africa Twin, it's still a bit more innovative and dynamic in cars. I don't think anyone would ever get the idea to deliver a sporty car without a dual clutch gearbox. So it's a clear benefit. What we have to say though is that with other technical features, they didn't do their homework as well. I'm just mentioning the front collision warning, which is the worst feature we've noticed on a motorcycle in a long time. It gives you signals in the brake lever, but it also falsely detects obstacles. And then in critical situations, it starts messing around in your braking and tries to help you, which works more badly than well. So just turn that feature off. And BMW people, I don't know, delete it or make it better, no idea. And with the Honda Africa Twin, you have to say the control concept with, you said it's 15 buttons, we didn't count them, but I've been complaining for 10 years and you are new to it. It's not a smooth, intuitive control concept. I think we agree there.
Yes, unless you like honking, because every time you want to indicate left or right, the horn gets involved, at least for me.
Same for me, and the cyclists were, of course, annoyed because they thought I had no patience. Otherwise, in terms of practical features, BMW did some things better. You have an electrically adjustable windscreen that works really well. Here on the Honda, you have to take both hands off the handlebars. Hello, dear Japanese engineers. When riding in rain on the highway, you need both hands on the bars, and then adjusting the screen like that is a bit annoying. So there are small differences in the operation. A plus point here, a plus point there. The Africa Twin has Apple CarPlay, but you need a cable connection. That means your phone, your €1,600 iPhone 16 or 17 Pro is hanging on the handlebar when it's storming and snowing, and that's not a nice feeling. Cable wrapped around and plugged in here, or you put it in your jacket, protected from wind, weather and vibrations, and you still have the cable coming out. Not super elegant, but Apple CarPlay is still a better option than the BMW Connected Ride here. But I think we agree, BMW still manages to display all the functions more intuitively and more compactly than the Africa Twin.
Yes, definitely. The user interface and all the controls, how menus are nested, where you find what is better and more intuitive on the BMW. We wanted to switch off that adaptive collision assistant while riding, and that was really easy, right? Into the menu, setting, and we found it immediately and disabled it forever. That I think is really good. On the Africa Twin, you would have to deal with it more deeply. The things you need, like switching DTC, the different modes, those features all work great. But going deeper, doing it intuitively without thinking or looking, you definitely can't do that while riding. On the BMW, it feels relatively easy, even independent of the fact that I owned one before. The joystick or the wheel controller is a relief. That is well done.
And then I think we also agree on seat position and seat quality. Normally, I think we both prefer a harder seat, but Honda tries to force a low seat height. And on longer stretches, ergonomically, the BMW gave a more comfortable riding position for you and for me. So how do you feel about the seats and seating position on both bikes?
The BMW actually lowers itself, and it theoretically has a seat height of 855 or something like that, so it's actually fairly high. That gives you a nice triangle at the knee, a fairly relaxed knee angle. The foot pegs on the BMW are shifted further back, which means the knee angle, despite the higher seat height, is similar to the Honda. So from the knee angle, both are very relaxed. On the BMW, you have a sportier riding position because the feet are further back. On the Honda, you have a position that probably suits standing up more because the pegs are further forward. But what also comes in is that the Honda has a very low seat and the seat shape. And because of that, the hip angle on the Honda feels a bit more demanding for me, for whatever reason. Knee angle the same, hip angle a bit more demanding, seat also a bit harder. That suits me because I like harder seats. You can also slide back easily on the Honda because it's a bit flatter. So even on longer rides or highway stretches, you can find a good position and change it up. On the BMW, I feel the padding is a bit softer. You sit down and it feels more comfortable. But in the long run, I don't know. That's a matter of taste.
Strangely, I have to admit, I found the BMW seating position more comfortable this time. And on the Africa Twin, I think I suffer a bit from the fact that they're trying to force a low seat height. It pulls me in right in the sensitive parts. You can slide back, but it still pulls you forward a bit. So this time, I would prefer the BMW seating position, even if I feel the seat quality isn't on the same level as the Africa Twin. Now we come to a point where I think the Africa Twin was the higher quality machine for both of us, the suspension. It responds more finely and gives the impression of being tougher, more robust. You notice that especially on bad asphalt where impacts come through and you still want to ride reasonably fast. That translated into more confidence and higher speed, right?
Yes, although for me it was more the combination of DCT gearbox and the electronic suspension, which in my opinion, independent of the fact that the name Showa is on it, responds optimally on bad asphalt, like you said, on those gravel sections and deep holes, and it radiates a lot of calm, even though it is actually quite firm. The damping is excellent. And then combined with DCT in tight hairpins, even if it's bumpy and the asphalt is slippery with some sand, you don't have to think about feathering the clutch or dragging the rear brake. You don't have to think about any of that, because even at the lowest speed, even with terrible riding technique, the bike cannot stall in the corner. And now I have this suspension that creates confidence when it's really bad. And then the fact that I basically only need a bit of rear brake and a bit of throttle, and the rest I can forget. On those sections where we rode up to the reservoir, and then that real dirt road with tight hairpins and over 20% gradient in parts, with the Africa Twin it was really easy. And with the BMW, honestly, and this is surely also due to the winter break, with the BMW, with that battleship, I really struggled in the tight hairpins. As you know, you were riding behind me.
Come on, don't be so hard on yourself. Another thing to talk about are the brakes. The GS has a relatively soft, slightly vague brake pressure point. The Africa has a very hard pressure point again, and it feels like you need more hand force on the Africa Twin. Which brake did you like more, the BMW brake or the Africa Twin brake?
I'm used to bikes like this having excellent brakes, and I've gotten used to braking with one finger. I don't know, that's just what I do. And I can do that very easily on the BMW. On the Africa Twin, I really had to pull with one finger and thought, wow, that needs a lot of hand force. But then I switched to braking with two fingers and noticed the brake on the Africa Twin is great too. So there is nothing to complain about in terms of braking on those two motorcycles.
Okay, and then the engine, the BMW GS has the Boxer engine. We'll talk about that in a moment. An incredible piece of kit. It has shaft drive, which has advantages in maintenance, but disadvantages regarding running costs due to the new service intervals. But at the end of the day, whether DCT yes or DCT no, a really fantastic Honda gearbox with a perfect quick shifter, or like here, a dual clutch gearbox, is smoother, softer, more refined than the Boxer engine. So would you say you miss that smoothness so much that in first, second, third gear, the shift assistant on the BMW keeps kicking in and it feels rougher? Or do you think it's cool because you really feel the gears and the mechanics? How do you feel about it?
I like shifting because in my head I also have the feeling I can do anything. Like if I want to do a 200-meter wheelie, then I can snap the clutch. I can't do it, but theoretically I could. I like that. What I miss a little on the BMW when riding, especially when it gets slower and tighter and more corners, is that the shift assistant, even though it works excellently and always works, requires quite a lot of foot force and sometimes really pops hard. And in tight hairpins, that adds another little disturbance, which I simply do not have with the DCT from Honda. So the tighter, slower and more technical it gets, the more I tend toward letting the Honda do it. Everything else I still like, clutching, shifting, shift assistant, BMW, all great.
We had different BMW test bikes this year, one long-term tester with ASA and one without ASA. And I have to say, our editors completely fell in love with the GS with the automated shifting, and across the board, everyone said, with it, it's a higher purchase recommendation than without it. But the thing is, in our editorial team, it left marks on the brand image because I think all in all, we got 3 different engines in our GS and we had to go to the workshop again and again with recall issues. Once some relay even burned. That left a mark. And on the other hand, the Africa Twin collected a massive amount of plus points through the long-term test with Vara Hannes, and Boki rode it on a big trip and we never had problems with test bikes. So in terms of how much do we trust it over the next 100,000 kilometers, we have more trust in Honda than in BMW. Did this recall topic affect your opinion about BMW's reliability or not?
Well, I always kind of expect that, and I'm rather nice or optimistic with such things. If a completely new model comes with a lot of new features, I don't expect it to work perfectly in the first year. I know that from my private Ducatis too. Not at 20,000 euros and not at 40,000 euros either. The first year is just tough. But so far, these companies have usually managed to fix those teething problems in a way that even if you have a bike from the first model year, you don't keep dragging all those issues along forever. That's a shame, it shouldn't be like that. But on the other hand, you probably also don't want to wait 2 more years for the 1300. So yes, I'm forgiving. And I have to say, with my 1200, the rally, I had it for 2 years, I rode it a lot for my standards, and I had not a single problem. I can't think of anything. Nothing ever happened. 1 service, 2nd service, done. So I hope it will be the same with the 1300 now, after it seems everything is resolved.
Let's hope so, your word in God's ear. And the fans of the 1200 and 1250 will roll their eyes and say, yeah, everything used to be better. We've had our experiences. and then it's important. At the end of the day, we also have to talk about the engine and the power difference. The reason we're only talking about it so late is because in daily riding here on Gran Canaria, it made no difference at all. On the contrary, I even had the feeling that in tight sections you were faster on the Africa Twin, and I had a harder time keeping up. But of course, we're not fools. On faster stretches, this engine is just unbelievable. This combination of power from the basement and then still adding more on top, that is absolutely outstanding and still impressive even after all these years of boxer riding, right?
Absolutely, but I'm exactly with you. On this island or on roads like this, tight and twisty and not optimal, I am actually much faster or safer on the Africa Twin, and because of that safety, also a bit faster. When the toe tips start scraping, I'm still miles away from that on the BMW here. But in terms of engine power, as soon as it gets a bit more open, I don't mean the highway, but when the corner radii get wider, you immediately feel the BMW is the stronger bike. Then I think the suspension also works better when the BMW electronics can settle into the conditions. When not too much changes, the suspension is excellent in fast sections. The bike feels planted, you can really push, and that feeling comes back like it used to back home in the Waldviertel on road tires. The BMW is a real rocket. On this island though, for me, it's kind of like using a cannon to shoot sparrows. The BMW offers features and power and torque that a normal person, or the way I ride, cannot exploit here. I cannot even exploit the Africa Twin here. I would feel much better served with the Africa Twin here, but somewhere else it might look very different again. Both have their qualities.
But to wrap it up, you still have a clear recommendation. You have a recommendation for who should choose what, and you also still have a favorite that would put your wallet under pressure, right?
Yes. If I can start with myself, I would definitely go for the BMW. I don't ride gravel tours, I don't do trips where I mount panniers. I would choose the sporty travel enduro because on weekends I can go and rip around with my buddies in the Waldviertel. And for me, if I put it into a speed number from 120 and up, on a closed course of course, then the BMW would be the better choice for me. I simply have everything there. I have a sporty travel machine that in fast corners almost feels like a supermoto, like a big supermoto. If I had to make a recommendation, I would really tie it to the profile. Independent of brands, if you're a BMW fan, buy the BMW. If you're a Honda fan, take the Africa Twin. The difference probably won't be dramatic like you said, but both are great bikes. But if I decide by riding profile, if you ride very twisty roads, alpine passes, bad roads, occasionally a gravel road, then definitely the Africa Twin Adventure Sports with DCT. You don't even have to think about it, in my view. And if you ride more like highways, fast tours, and full gas Sardinia kind of trips, you know, that style from around 100 and up when you go for a sporty ride, then the BMW is probably the better choice. And if the roads are better and more predictable, the BMW suspension is great. If the roads constantly change, then the Africa Twin is great because that Showa suspension seems to work mechanically really well without needing an electronic restriction crew like it apparently does on the BMW.
Okay, and for me, after thinking about it for a long time, trying to crystallize a recommendation, if we're talking travel enduros, the travel and touring aspect on the 1300 GS is a bit more in the foreground, and BMW offers different GS variants. There's the Adventure, and in the other direction, there's that unbelievably beautiful R12 GS. These machines can go a bit more in the sport tourer direction, and even visually, they are a bit sportier, a bit more touring oriented. So the more you come from that side, the asphalt side, the touring and travel side, the GS might be the right choice in terms of character, seat comfort, and seating position. But if the enduro aspect is what matters most to you, even within the travel enduro category, if you want to ride standing up comfortably, if you want tougher, rougher, more intense experiences far away, where you need deep trust in the survival ability of a rugged, indestructible machine, then the Africa Twin might be the better choice, where the enduro focus is stronger. On long stages, I felt more comfortable on the GS here. I've been here for a full week now. Nevertheless, for me, the pendulum swings a bit more toward the Honda Africa. I have a bit more trust in the brand, and I love dual clutch transmission. So despite the power disadvantage here on the island, if we put the keys on the table right now, I think I'd be about 3 to 5% more toward the Africa Twin. But it was an incredibly close duel, I have to say. And especially because both bikes now have these 19-inch wheels, they are unbelievably close to each other. And if you haven't tried it in a while, try the Africa Twin Adventure Sports with the 19-inch wheel. It's incredible. Give DCT a chance. And for those for whom the old GS was too tall, give the new adaptive ride height control or whatever it's called exactly. I think it's adaptive ride height regulation here. Give it a chance. And now we're going to give the weather a chance because the conditions here have been insanely varied, and now we're going to give it a go down in the pass and really push it. Thank you very much. Bye and baba.